Today we're going to have a fireside chat on turning the AI buzzword into real growth. We're going to hear from Rachel MacPherson, SVP and GM of Global E-commerce at Marc Jacobs, and Richard Jones, CRO at Wunderkind. Today they're going to share about how to cut through the noise and harness advanced data-driven AI to create real growth opportunities for modern marketers. And with that, welcome to the stage, Rachel and Richard.
Welcome to today's session. My name is Richard Jones, and as you just heard, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Wunderkind. For those of you who don't know, Wunderkind is a performance marketing platform that is used by 800 brands around the world, and it uses AI, data, and decisioning to drive revenue uplifts for the brands that we work with. And I'm really thrilled today to be joined by Rachel MacPherson from Marc Jacobs to be talking to you about a very interesting topic. So Rachel, could you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, hi everyone, I'm Rachel MacPherson. As Richard said, I'm the SVP GM of Global E-commerce for Marc Jacobs. I've been there about 3.5 years. I hate to date myself, but I've spent the last 3 decades in retail for a variety of brands, including department stores, and mono brands like Marc Jacobs, as well as online retailers like Shopbop and beauty as well. I know some of my colleagues are out there from my prior companies. So thrilled to be here today with Richard. And I know this is like a really big room, so I feel like a little, but nice to have everyone here.
All right, let's kick off with the first question. And we're going to talk about preserving brand experience versus conversion-focused tools. And so, Rachel, luxury brands are traditionally focused on perfecting the customer experience and storytelling, but business growth, especially in digital, often demands far more kind of aggressive tactics than you typically see in luxury. So how do you personally approach the tension between preserving that editorial premium experience and then using conversion-focused tools?
So this is, in fact, one of the biggest struggles we have every single day in how we make decisions. So being at a luxury brand, you know, the most important thing you have is your brand identity and integrity. And so we do everything we can to protect that brand integrity and build brand equity and make sure that we are telling curated and cohesive editorial stories to our customer. But obviously, it is critically important, and we all know that using AI, personalization, technology in general to drive at conversion is successful. So it is a balancing act every single day. You know, there was actually an example recently where, you know, my CEO was fed up with the Wunderkind overlay. That's our email sign-up capture module that pops up in a somewhat invasive way. And he was like, I am so sick of this. I don't care what it does. I want you to remove it. And I said to him, so is let's see, one of our top objectives in the company, in fact, driving new customer acquisition? And he was like, yes. I go, so it actually does drive 66% of our email capture. So I will defer to you if you say that that's absolutely what you want to do, but I will tell you that we need to completely lower our new customer acquisition objectives, and unless you're prepared to do that, then I can't take it down. So these are the conversations that we have and that we struggle with. You try to provide the data to say, you know, here's why we're utilizing this very commercial and per se not elevated tactic, but we need it if we believe that these are the objectives we're trying to achieve.
Thank you very much for fighting the good battle for us. So, all right, let's talk a little bit more about kind of navigating that brand versus kind of revenue trade-offs that you have to deal with on a daily basis. Can you share a specific example where you had to make a daily decision, maybe even fought some internal battles over it, on whether to prioritize brand or revenue?
Yeah, so some examples I can think of are, you know, we are lucky to work at a brand where there's actually an amazing, iconic American designer who has a tremendous amount of heritage legacy in the space, and we want to capitalize on that. That differentiates us from other brands that we consider in our competitive set. For example, a Coach, who is an incredible brand, but we actually have this designer. So some of the things that Marc, the man, is really involved in is the runway, the Met Gala. He always addresses a variety of A-list celebs, and that content is great and editorial and inspiring, but it is not really shoppable. So, we're asked always to do a homepage takeover for a number of days, showing all the looks from the Met Gala or from the runway. And meanwhile, it is not shoppable. So we try to balance it, for example, and say, fine, the homepage takeover can be about the runway, but let's show some runway-inspired handbags, or let's show what some of the guests are wearing or carrying, because we gift them with some of the things from our current collection, and turn that into a PLP that can at least drive to something commercial. So that's kind of a way to balance.
So if we look at kind of manual curation or kind of automated AI recommendations, if we talk about manual versus automated merchandising, say, what are pros and cons of each approach for a luxury brand? And how do you actually decide when to lean into kind of manual curation and when to, give over and let AI drive your recommendations?
So we've done an incredible amount of testing around product recommendations, and there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen on this topic. And certain people in the company actually would just prefer that we only have product recommendations that are specifically curated to tell an editorial story around a certain product. So, right now we have a Wild Daisy collection, and so it would be the Wild Daisy tote with the Wild Daisy wallet and the Wild Daisy beauty bag and the Wild Daisy sneaker and the Daisy earrings and the Daisy fragrance, and that's your product recommendations. But we know that the customer doesn't necessarily shop that way, and we know that when we put dynamic product recommendations based on what other users have browsed or bought, that's going to drive higher conversion, higher revenue. So we have both. So actually we have 3. So on every PDP that you see for us, the first thing you see is Complete the Look, which is a manually curated product recommendations section that really tells that product point of view. And then the bottom 2 are dynamic recommendation modules that we know we need from a commercial standpoint. And product recommendations for us drive on average 8 to 10% of our total revenue, and up to 12% when we get aggressive in putting them on the homepage and things like that, which we don't do that much, again, because they don't always enhance brand storytelling, and the homepage is kind of the window into our brand. But for PDPs, for example, that's the way we balance it. We do 1 manually curated one and 2 dynamic ones.
Was it a struggle to get the dynamic ones in the first place, from a landing it?
It wasn't, well, yes and no. There's openness in our company to testing.
Yeah.
So we were willing to test it. We tested it and saw it perform well, then tested 2 dynamic ones against the 1 dynamic one. The 2 dynamic ones overperformed the 1, so then we had 2, but then there were many people who were unhappy that we didn't have manually curated ones, so then we added that one and tested the 3 against the 2. It wasn't really additive, but I'm like, I'll take that. That's a win on my end. That's a win for us.
Right, that's the balancing act.
Yeah.
All right, let's pivot to communicating trade-offs to executive leadership, and that's an example of a trade-off. So what's your strategy for kind of explaining or perhaps defending these kinds of decisions to executives who might want one clear answer, either protect the brand or just grow the database? How do you manage those trade-offs?
I mean, for me, I'm a very data-driven decision maker, so I try to bring data up front, and sharing that will help the narrative that you're trying to tell. But it can still be challenging. I think, an example I would give again, this was pretty recently where there was pushback around, the triggered SMSs we're sending. They're not overly elevated. They don't enhance storytelling. We actually started this in February last year with Wunderkind. We transitioned from our prior SMS vendor to Wunderkind because Wunderkind has the ability to do triggered SMSs, and we had already been doing behavioral emails with them and understood the power of them. And so, when we received pushback, again, we shared that triggered SMSs are actually 40% of our total SMS volume, 12% of our total email channel volume if you include SMS, and then our triggered SMSs are actually 8 times higher in conversion rate than our normal marketing SMSs. So we say we think we know what the customer wants to hear, which is, the marketing SMSs that we're telling the brand story, but obviously what the customer converts on more is what they've shown interest in. So, for me, it's a lot about trying to share the data, and that helps everybody. They don't like it necessarily, but it brings them along with you.
Right, understood. Okay, so let's talk about the evolving luxury attitudes towards AI tactics. Are you seeing kind of any shifts in how luxury brands broadly think about AI-powered growth tactics? And are there any best practices or examples that you think are moving kind of the industry forward in this regard?
Well, for me, it's about where to use the technology and the AI. So if you get deeper down into the customer journey or the browse path where you're not as focused as telling the brand story, but you're trying to help the customer shop, and it's more like a UX UI thing, so one example I have is our on-site search solution. So a year ago, we're on SFCC, we were using the out-of-the-box Einstein on-site search, which for those of you who still may be on it, it's not the best, and we were looking for a third-party solution that was going to help us improve our on-site search relevancy of those results. So we talked to several different legacy solutions and then also some more AI-based solutions that have large language and natural language models, and we ended up doing a 60-day POC with an AI on-site search solution called XGen AI. And in that 60-day POC, we saw incredible results, including a double-digit increase in average revenue per user, as well as increases in conversion rate. So we transitioned to them in the third quarter of last year, and if you look at on-site search today, it represents well over 20% of our total revenue. The conversion rate of the search user versus the non-search user is 5 times, whereas with SFCC, it was 3 times. And we're seeing about a 9% increase in AOV versus non-search users. So tremendously successful in positively impacting KPIs all along the way. And again, we get pushback from executives who want brand control. They want to know exactly what the homepage will look like or exactly how PLP will be merchandised. But in terms of search, that's a place that you can really use technology and get closer to what the customer is looking for faster.
Yeah, one of the things that we're seeing across our customers in the luxury space is, obviously quite synonymous with buying luxury, is wanting a luxury client experience when you're engaging with that brand across multiple different channels and strategies. And our goal is to integrate identity and data and decisioning into those omni-channel experiences. So if you come to a brand site and you're engaging with a chatbot agent, that next time you come back to the site, it recognizes who you are, and how did you get on looking for that white T-shirt, and all these blue jeans go with it, and it's recognizing and personalizing the experience across time, state, and channels. I think provides more of a kind of luxury concierge type experience in the luxury space. I wanted to ask you about if there's key takeaways for sort of balancing kind of brand and AI. So if there's one thing that you'd want other luxury brand leaders to take away about kind of balancing brand integrity with AI-driven growth, what would that be?
I mean, it's just a matter of where and when it makes sense to use the technology. And so, I think that we have done some content creation with AI, but it's generally for our sale campaigns. Right now our pre-fall campaign is Doja Cat. It's, we've used Kim Kardashian and Kendall Jenner. We do, Irina Shayk. We're not gonna use a ton of AI with that because the beauty kind of is the talent. But recently we are testing using ChatGPT for our made-for-outlet product, not our mainline, Marc Jacobs branded product, but our made-for-outlet product. So, for us, we feel more comfortable using kind of AI so we test into it, right? So how did that content creation go? How did the customer respond to it? So it's finding the places that you feel comfortable using it, dipping your toes in that way, seeing where it takes you, not being afraid of it. But we're testing chatbot in customer service. So there's a lot of different things and ways in which technology can help you operationalize and scale your strategies in a better way than you can do without it. But for us, it is very much a balance because, again, like I said at the beginning, it just really has to be protection of the brand integrity that rules if you're a luxury brand.
Now, you mentioned Wunderkind a few times. Obviously, technology is very much on the performance side of things versus, helping build kind of brand storytelling, et cetera. But could you just give the audience a little bit of a taste of, what's your journey been with Wunderkind? Why did you bring us on? Give us a taste of that experience.
Now, this might actually be the reason why I was asked to speak up here, not sure. But I've been partnering with Wunderkind for a very long time in my career. When I was at Ann Taylor, we actually brought them on as, at the time they were named Bounce Exchange. I want to say this was 2012, long time ago. Then they changed to Bounce X. I also used them at Tarte Cosmetics. Then I brought them on when I was at Lafayette 148. Now I'm at Marc Jacobs. And, with I've used Wunderkind differently a little bit in each of the brands that I've been at, but we have the most expansive program here with not only emails, but SMS, as I've spoken about it before, and also doing international campaigns as well. So, overall, it's been a great partnership. Wunderkind has been really a strong supporter of all the brands that I've been at in the way that they're as much invested in the success of your business with them as you are, which is great.
Brilliant, appreciate it. Now, Wunderkind does have a booth here, so please, if you find this interesting, come and check us out, speak to the team. There's one thing that I'm actually really pleased to announce, which is happening tomorrow. Now, your experience with us over a number of those brands has been, Wunderkind is a managed service, so we really come in as a full service and help drive that revenue lift across own channels, across email, text, etc. Tomorrow, we're talking about the launch of a product called Build, and essentially that is making a kind of self-service version. If you have a big technology team, you've invested in your ESP, CDP, and you don't want a managed service provider to come in and take over, now we have a full set of APIs, SDKs, and integrations. So you can live entirely within your own ESP, CDP. You can control your own creatives, all of your triggered program flows. They're all done in your ESP, CDP. And all Wunderkind is really doing is giving you that AI data and decisioning to basically make that ESP, CDP just perform much better, using our identity graph to understand who individuals are, close that anonymous traffic gap on your sites, and provide more data for the ESP CDP to deliver personalized messages that convert. We're really excited about it. That's coming tomorrow, so if you're also interested in that, look out for what goes on in the press. And as I said, there is a booth in the hall for you to come and chat to our team. So just leave it to me to thank you, Rachel, very much for coming here today. A round of applause for Rachel.